31,000 in China forced to flee homes in Beijing as Typhoon Doksuri brings heavy rains. The strongest storm hit country in years also caused widespread flooding. This looks like the effect of a tsunami. Like, you know, it's China doesn't talk about climate change. I'll explain to you when we talk. I don't know if China, like, internally talks about climate change, but China does a lot about climate change. Obviously, investment in high-speed rail, limiting people's car usage, and they're the world's largest producers of solar panels, stuff like that. But they don't talk about it, I think, because authoritarian countries really don't want to instill alarmism that isn't tied into their, like, interpersonal narrative of conquest and ethnic supremacy, or of, like, national triumph, you know? Like, fascists don't do well with conflicts that aren't, that can't be, like, boiled down to the Jews, or I guess in China's case. The West, there's a lot of stuff with China. It's not just the West. It's, I don't know, the Tibetans, whatever. If China can find a way to blame climate change on the Tibetans, like they've gone to worshiping like an ancient sun god that's bringing the wrath down upon the world, then I think they'll start being louder about the climate change. Last stream, Mortaray, thank you. I know Russia's fascist, but is China fascist? Well, it is, yes. It's fascist in a different way, but yeah, it is for sure. It's also like very varied. Like there are parts of China that are basically like they don't even experience the effect of the CCP. The country's so big, you know. It's a big, it's a wide, yeah. This is like billions and billions of dollars of damage, man. Jesus. I thought it was just authoritarian. Well, it is authoritarian, but it's authoritarian with other, you know, associated modifiers that align with fascist ideology. What, can't we just take the water from China and move it over to Italy to put out the fires?
On the island of Rhodes,
no, why not?
15,000 people have been evacuated from villages and several hotels in what authorities have called the largest ever fire evacuation in the country's history.
We can ship oil on boats, why not water? Giant tankers carrying floodwater from China all the way across the... all the way across the... through the Suez. Over to Italy, the Mediterranean.
Much of Algeria's northern provinces have been torched. Homes, trees and land left in ashes.
La chaleur, c'est horrible. Il y a toute la fumée noire et toute la chaleur qui vient sur nous. Et les cendres là qui nous chauffent. J'ai essayé de couvrir les enfants là pour les protéger.
Remember that a little over a century ago, there was a proposed idea to drain the Mediterranean for more land for European expansion. Can you imagine how bad this would be if the Mediterranean had been drained and there wasn't even any water nearby? Oh my god. Thank god that didn't happen. Whose idea was that? I think there were a couple of groups that proposed it. The basic idea was, what if we just made more Europe? It didn't really happen. It wasn't really going to happen. Can't drain the Mediterranean. How can you drain a sea? They wanted to put it in Africa. The idea was you would create more Europe by emptying the Mediterranean, and you would direct the water towards Central Africa, thereby irrigating the land and making it better for colonial agriculture. Sounds like a white person idea. That is correct. Did you guys see that video of the Greek firefighting plane that crashed? The pilot was killed. They did a low dive to dump a bunch of water on a fire near a mountaintop. It was so low, and its wing, or I think an aileron, got clipped by the top of a tree. And because it's just a little firefighting plane, it just destroyed that part of it, and it spiraled out, and they crashed into the mountain. Are we all gonna die? Eventually, yeah. Two people died. Okay, there were two people in the plane. Can't we just use military airplanes for that? No. Firefighting airplanes, you have to fly really low, because if you drop the water from too far up, it gets dispersed too far. You need the water to get dropped on, like, one spot, so there's enough of it to put the fire out, and it's not just like you're raining on it, you know? So you need small, light planes that have a big, like, cargo bay that can just all dump open at once. And normally you need, like, special planes for it, you know? You need a lot of water. You need to be able to move. Oh, you need to be able to move slowly too. You know, you're not going to accurately drop water on a target that you're 20 meters above. If you're flying at, like, you know, 400 miles an hour. You want to be able to slowly coast in, drop the water. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a very specialized kind of plane. Firefighting planes are generally decommissioned military cargo planes. They modify them, though, right? Well, I guess a military cargo plane would also be used to flying low and slow, but we just need it to be lower and slower with the fire. Can't military chop the trees to dig a trench? You mean create a fire break? Yeah, that's been happening. That happens everywhere. But it's really, 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 really difficult to do fire breaks when the fires are happening everywhere, you know? Fire breaks are good if you're trying to contain, like, the spread of one fire. But if fires are erupting all over the Mediterranean, you know, it's like you have to fire break everything in every direction, you know? It's like, well, how? How? Just drop water bombs from bombers? You know, I've always wondered if there's some other way to do, like, mass firefighting on a plane. Because you know how fire extinguishers don't shoot water? They shoot, like, that, I forget what exactly they shoot, but they basically deprive it of oxygen, and that's how they put out the fire. Yeah, it can be a foam, and sometimes it's like that spraying, like, carbon, like, white gas stuff. I think it depends on, yeah, it depends on the extinguisher. I've always wondered, would there be a way to drop, like, a highly compressed bomb of gas that you could drop, and then it would just blanket an entire, like, mountainside and make it impossible for the fire to get oxygen? Yeah, retard gas, basically, like whatever TYT have been huffing. Yeah, that. We take up, we connect the TYT office to an air compressor, and we just sort of harvest it. Okay, but, like, jokes aside, I want to know, there's got to be some way to do that, right? But they don't do that, so I'm wrong. You know, I'm not smarter than them, than the firefighting crews. I just wonder if there's a better way. I don't know. Yeah, it might just be an expensive thing. Like, it's just better to dump a fuck ton of water, which is basically free, than working on, like, super advanced fucking ultra bombs or whatever. It'd kill all the animals on that side of the mountain. Well, the fire's probably doing that anyway, right? With the smoke. I think that if you're close enough to a fire that you would be hit by the bomb, you're already dead from the smoke. I'm guessing, at least. Look how close the fires are to the buildings. Holy shit. This is Athens. This isn't some podunk village. This is Athens. It's right there. That doesn't look that effective. I think they're like scrambling. It's not. Look at the name top right. It just said Athens. Is it another place? Oh, sorry. This is Lagonisi, Greece. So they just said Athens here, but on the top right they're referring. Okay. Sorry. This is Lagonisi. But they're saying that it damaged houses in Athens. So that would be west of Athens. Well, I don't know if west of Athens means in Athens. If somebody says east of LA, they usually mean in LA, but on the east side. Got to go to Europe before it all burns down. Yeah, I want to visit Paris. I want to go be a homosexual. I want to go to a coffee shop. I want to look at skinny girls smoke cigarettes. I want to go to Paris. You live in Seattle. There are so many coffee shops there. Yeah, but it's not just the coffee shops. It's the environment. You know, it's a whole thing. Swedish fighter jets drop bombs at forest fire. Okay, that's loud. Let's do it without the audio. Thank you. Fighter jets? All right, I trust them. Sure. This is from 5 years ago, so this isn't relevant to the current fires, but us, they're just doing bombing runs? Yeah, man, whatever. We need fire break ICBMs, okay? We need to launch from our nuclear silos. Okay, I'm getting a lot of YouTube links right now. Let's dial it down a little bit. What is all this? Okay, many of these are tangentially relevant at best. Oh, this is the same video, but better. Way better.
Ja, idag har vi genomfört ett prov och test efter begäran från räddningsledaren.
I don't even
Där har
see
vi
a
släppt
fire.
en bomb från en Rotor JAS 39 i syfte att med hjälp av tryckpåverkan släcka eventuellt en brand.
I don't even know. We're working towards the point where militaries are going to have to be deployed to fight climate. I mean, yeah, I get, yeah. That'd be a better use for them than most of the other stuff we use them for, right? Vaush, is every country in existence right now either neolib/neocon or fascist? No, but those are the main ones. The better question would be, like, what's the range, right? Most countries, like most of them, are either liberal or fascist. Those are like the two ideologies on the planet right now. There are many different ways to be liberal and many different ways to be fascist, but from a Marxist perspective, it relates fundamentally to the mode and nature of government power and of economic rule. And it's usually one of those two. In an economic mode sense, liberal and fascist governments aren't necessarily that different. In social modes, they are, very much so. Same with political modes. So there's variance there. There are also countries that I would argue are too, I don't know if primitive is the right word. I mean it kind of like primitive governance, but they're not in a position to really be either. For example, if a country is so poor that their country is just like authoritarian, you know? Like a good example would be Burkina Faso, right? Burkina Faso might have authoritarian military leaders, but they don't really have a civil society capable of supporting fascism the way that I would understand it. It's basically just you have desperately poor people in an area, and then one guy and his like cabinet, and they're wealthy and they're powerful, and that's it. And that's more just authoritarian, but that's closer to feudalism than it is fascism, in my opinion. Fascism has much more to do with the social modality than it does just like the existence of authoritarianism. Yeah, it's warlordism, basically. It's just warlords, right? Warlords aren't fascist. They can't be. In fact, I would argue that being a warlord is just as far from being a fascist as being a liberal is, because fascism requires an ideology of subservience to the state, an ethnic, a theory of ethnic unification, narratives about internal and external enemies. Warlords, almost by definition, don't engage with that level of civil society because they're warlords, right? They just happen to be the guy with the guns. Like, a warlord doesn't necessarily have these underlying ideological systems of self-justification. A warlord is in charge because they're a warlord. It's like the economic and social equivalent of Iraq. Where would you classify North Korea in this? North Korea is fascist and totalitarian. Totalitarianism mostly describing the degree of there being a surveillance state, more so than anything else, I think.